So now is the time that we begin talking about AWS CLI. Now, AWS CLI stands for Command Line Interface. And usually what you do is whenever you're making use of AWS, you make use of console home over here. Okay, this is the AWS console. And here you basically make use of this console to set up resources on your account. But there will be scenarios wherein you don't want to make use of the UI interface. You might want to make use of command line and manage AWS resources via command line. So AWS has a tool for that. So it's called CLI. So here we'll go to products. We'll go to developer tools over here. And here you have command line interface. So you can either navigate it this way, or if AWS has changed the UI, you can search for AWS CLI and you should be taken to this page. Okay. You can search for AWS CLI on any of your favorite search engines. So if you come over here, you will see over here. Okay. The command line interface is a unified tool to manage your AWS services. And with this one tool to download, with just one tool to download and configure, you can control multiple services from the command line and even automate it through scripts. So things like creating EC2 instances, getting the list of EC2 instances, starting the server, all of this can be done using the command line instead of going to the console. Okay, so this can integrate really well via scripts or with the scripts. Okay, so you can read more about this over here. Okay, you can see this is the command over here that you can run, which is AWS help. They have command. So I'm here on Windows. Okay, I'll head over to the terminal. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can just open the inbuilt terminal that you have with your operating system. Okay, so on Windows, this is PowerShell, and I'll just type in AWS help over here. Let us see if we have this installed onto our system. So I don't have AWS, so this AWS command is not recognized, which means CLI is not installed onto my system. Okay, so to get this set up onto our system, what we will have to do is we'll have to come over here. We'll have to click on get started. And when you come on get started, this is a bit of documentation about the CLI over here. Okay, you can check the prerequisites if you wish to. Here there is about the AWS CLI, what it means. Now, when we talk about prerequisites, these will be the prerequisites that you can go through. Install and update. So we are going to install and update. Now, here you are seeing a warning. Okay, so AWS has released CLI version 2. And if you're on version 1, it is having the instructions over here for you to migrate to version 2. But we are going to make use of the latest version, so we don't have to worry about that. If you scroll down a bit, you will see AWS CLI install and update instructions, and these are segregated based on the popular operating system. So if you're on Linux, you can click over here and follow the commands over here. Okay, so here you can make use of command line installer, command line, basically if you're on ARM, snap package. Okay, so these are multiple ways in which you can do things, and everything is given step by step over here for Linux. In fact, for all the operating system, but we are talking about Linux over here. So you can just follow this guide. For Mac also, it's pretty straightforward over here. So you can see this is the requirement over here, supported Mac OS version. Okay, so if you are making use of the latest version of CLI over here, it is supporting 11 plus. And then you have something called as GUI installer. So you can just download the package file from here and you can get it installed using the interface. Okay, so this is for Mac. And if you are so basically you can run it like this. So these are the run instructions over here, and then to verify that that the shell can find and run AWS command, you can run this command, which AWS. Okay, so this is going to print this over here. Okay, and you can even get the version. All right, so this is for Mac. You can even make use of command line over here. You can see all the commands have been given, straightforward command line. If you want to install for all the users or on your machine, you can follow this. If you want to just install it for the current user, you can make use of this. Okay, so you can follow this guide. Installation is pretty straightforward, I would say. We are going to try this out for Windows. So as on Windows, as you can see here, okay, here you can see over here, this is using the MSI installer, and alternatively, you can run these commands. Okay, you can run these commands. On Mac over here, we had, so if you make use of GUI, okay, you had an option to run this as well using this. Okay, so you just have to run it and it's installed. It was pretty straightforward, and same goes for Windows as well. So what I will do is I'll just download this package and I will simply run it. So I've downloaded the package, and you can see this is the welcome screen if you run it. Okay, it's just like any normal installer that you would have on Windows while installing any other software. So I'll say next. Okay, I accept the terms. I'll say next. Okay, and here it is going to show you some information where it's installing and all. So you can see it's installing over here on my system. Next, and then I'll say install. So we'll wait for a while until the process completes. So it will take a few minutes. So you can see the installation is complete and I get the confirmation, and I'll just say finish. And now I'll come back to my PowerShell instance, and here I'll just run AWS help again. Okay, so it's still saying it's not recognized. So maybe I need to restart the terminal. Okay, so I'll just quickly restart the terminal, or I'll just open a new tab of the terminal rather than restarting, because that instance is not picking the new installed software. So you might have to restart your terminal. Okay, now let us run AWS help, and it should work now. You can see, right? And I can even type in. So here you have this command, okay, AWS-version, which gives you the version of the software installed. So here I'm going to print this. Okay, you can see this is the output over here, and you can see this output matches the one that we are seeing over here. Okay, so congratulations, you have just configured the AWS CLI. So once you do this, you think you are ready to make use of CLI? Absolutely not. So you have just installed AWS CLI, which is the software or the tool onto your system. But you have not authenticated yourself with this tool, right? So it's just installed on a machine and it does not know who you are, or it does not have access to the account. So if you, let's say, want to run some AWS specific command. So right now you're just checking the version and you're running the help command and the version command. It's working fine. But with AWS CLI, you can create S3 buckets. You can get the list of all the S3 buckets. So let us try running one command. Okay, I'm going to say AWS S3 ls. So this command gives you the list of S3 buckets in your AWS account. So we have not configured this yet. Okay, we are not ready to use, but let us see the output of this command. So if I run this, okay, you will see it says unable to locate credentials, and you can configure the credentials by running this command AWS configure. So we need to configure our CLI first with our account. So for that, we will come over here, and here you can see after getting started, there is something called as configure. So come over here. Okay, I am not sure. So I don't make use of this documentation to configure the AWS CLI, but there should be some good amount of options. Okay, maybe it's sounding a little bit complex over here. So what I will do is I'll just give you my steps as to how I configure AWS CLI. Okay, now when you configure AWS CLI, it is going to ask you for a few things. Okay, so first thing is it is going to ask you for AWS key ID. Okay, then it will ask you for a secret access key. And then it will ask you for a default region name and default output format. So these 4 things you're going to need. Okay, so you come over here to the console. We'll have to go to IAM, and here I assume you have signed in using a IAM user account. Okay, so this is a IAM user for my account. If you scroll down here, you will have access to security credentials. So if you are a user, you will have access to the security credentials. Go to security credentials, and here you will see all the security credentials for your account. So just scroll down and you're going to see different things. So here this is for multi-factor authentication, and here you have something called as access keys. So here you can see use access key to send programmatic calls from the AWS CLI, AWS tools, PowerShells, all of this. Okay, so you can say create an access key over here, and it is going to ask you why you want to create a access key. And here there are some best practices. Avoid using long-term credentials like access keys to improve security. Okay, so it's saying don't make use of this because you should use it only if it's needed. Okay, don't just use it and create access keys for your account, because if it's shared publicly somewhere, if it gets leaked, then anyone can gain access to your AWS account. So remember, these keys that we are creating are not supposed to be shared with anyone. Okay, so I'm just going to select Command Line Interface over here. Okay, and here I'm going to say next. Okay, I understand the above recommendation and want to proceed. I'll say next. So it is going to tell us the description. So I'm going to say Windows demo over here. You can add like any sort of description value. which will tell you the purpose of this access key for which it was created and where it will be used, so that in future if you have to get rid of any access key, you can select and get rid of access keys. And then I'll say create access keys. I'm not going to share the access keys over here, okay, because this is sensitive information, so I'm going to keep it with myself. But when you create access keys, you're going to get the access keys on your account as well. Now I've created the access key on my AWS account. Now one thing you should know is when you create access key, that's the only time you get to see your access keys. Okay, then later on you cannot see your access key. So you have to copy it and save it at a safe location. And this is just for security purpose, that AWS does not show you your access key the next time you try to access. So if you want an access key again, you have to create a new one. That is how it works. Okay, so I have my access keys saved on a secure place. Now what I will do is I'm going to run a command over here. I'm going to say AWS configure. So I'll say configure like so, because I'm being asked to configure. And the moment you say configure, you will be asked for AWS access key ID. Okay, so the AWS access key ID that you got from the console when creating the access key, just copy and paste that over here. So after running AWS configure, I was asked for these 4 things. Okay, I've not recorded that because this is sensitive information. So I've added my key ID that I got from the AWS console. I've showed you how you can get it from AWS console. I've added the secret key over here, and you are asked for default region name over here. Okay, so you can choose the default region name. I've selected AP South 1. I'll show you how you can get this region name. And the default output format is JSON. You can choose JSON, table, text, or whatever you want to. But I prefer working with JSON. Generally, developers prefer JSON only. Okay, and default. So these 2 things okay, this thing I've told you. And now I'll show you how you can get your default region name. Okay, now default region name is the region name in which you wish to have, in which you wish to do things, okay, via the CLI. And this is a default region name, default one. Okay, so here if you come to the console, you will see the list of regions over here, and here you will see this code, this thing. So AP South 1 is Mumbai. If you're from United States, if you want to make use of North Virginia, you can make use of US East 1. If you're from Canada, you can make use of this. From Europe, you can make use of this. So just get the appropriate region for you that is closest, okay, and just make use of it and add it over there. The moment you do this, you will you won't see any sort of confirmation, but you will have AWS CLI configured onto your system. So now I do have AWS CLI configured onto my system. And what the CLI tool does is, after you do this, after you run AWS configure, and if the configuration is successful, the details are saved in files inside your computer as to who the user is. Okay, so on Mac there is a AWS credentials folder where it's stored, and somewhere in C drive where you have installed AWS on Windows, okay, it is going to store the credentials over there. Now you can verify the setup by running the same command which we tried to run early on, AWS S3 ls, and this time it is not throwing any sort of errors. Okay, so we don't have any sort of buckets that are created in our AWS account, right? So we are not seeing any sort of output over here, which means there is nothing to show, right? If you want to create, you can do that from here. You can do a lot of stuff. So the fact that we did not get any sort of errors, it means that we don't have any sort of buckets created over here. Early on when we ran the same command, we got an message wherein you should make use of AWS configure. You should make use of configure, which is AWS configure, and get things configured because it's not configured yet. So brilliant, and congratulations, you now have AWS CLI configured onto your system. And if you've completed this step, okay, pat yourself on the back. Okay, you are ready to interact with AWS resources from your system. So now it's time that we begin talking a bit more about the CLI. So what I would do is I would come over here in the CLI documentation that we were on, and here you have like AWS CLI examples, and here you can see different examples for making use of AWS CLI with different services. So you will have to expand this guided command examples over here. Okay, you also have command examples over here. Okay, so for example, under command example, if you want to see for Amazon EC2, you're going to see the examples over here. Okay, so you can see over here, create. So if I search for, create over here. So you can see over here, create image. There are tons of examples over here. You can see create. If you say launch over here, so you can like launch template version, launch template. You can search for run hyphen instance over here, run instances. So you are going to see something like this. Okay, this is the command that will help you run the instance into the default subnet. Okay, so we can do all these sort of things. You have things for S3 as well. Okay, so you can search for Amazon S3. Okay, I can't seem to find it over here, but it's there over here. Okay, you can see right route 53 Amazon S3 over here. So you can do tons of things over here as well. Create a bucket. So this is the command basically will help you create the bucket. Okay, so you can see S3 API, and you are essentially creating the bucket. So what I would do is I would come over here. You can either follow these examples, scroll up, or I would follow S3 command example, like guided command examples. Okay, and we can start with S3. So you can see high level S3 commands, prerequisites, and all of this. Okay, so you can see quite a few examples over here. Delete buckets, move objects, copy objects. So this way you can copy the objects from a bucket or a local directory. So if you have something on a local directory and if you want to copy it to a bucket, you can do that using this command. Okay, so there are quite a few. So you can see on the same page here we have the command to create the bucket. Okay, you have AWS S3 MB target and the options. So I'll copy this. Okay, and you can see the examples as well. Okay, you can see the example. Okay, so I'll just copy this example over here. I'll come over here. I'll paste this. Okay, so this is the bucket name. So I'm saying S3 MB S3 :2/. This is my bucket name. Now, if I want, I can modify this bucket name, but I'll just keep it like that only because this is a dummy bucket that I'm creating. Okay, and then I can also mention the region over here. So if you don't mention the region, it will get created, in the default region. But if you want to specify the region, you can specify it using this region flag, and you can come over here. Okay, if you go to AWS, you're going to see this region over here. Okay, AP South 1. So I'll just copy this region and I'll add it over here. And I'll also go to S3 and let us see if we have any sort of buckets in this region. So we don't have any sort of bucket. You can see it's saying it's asking us to create bucket, in fact, right? But let us try creating a bucket with this command. So I'll just press enter and okay. So an error occurred. Access denied. The requested bucket name start when calling the create bucket operation. So it's telling us that the bucket name starts with a reserved prefix. Okay, so maybe I'm not supposed to use this. I'm supposed to use test. I'll also add some random numbers in between over here so that the bucket name is unique over here, right? So I've added this and let me press enter now. Okay, so you can see this bucket is created over here. We got this confirmation. Okay, so if you come over here now and if you refresh, okay, so you can see over here on the left hand side, okay, general purpose buckets, and you should see this bucket being created. You can see there's a bucket that we have right now. Okay, and now earlier when we were running this AWS S3 ls command, you were not getting any output, but now if you run this, you will see the bucket name listed over here. Okay, and this will be the same bucket name that you have created. Now you can see over here, this is listed. Okay, this is the bucket that we have created. Okay, now if you come over here, this is done. All right, you can also get rid of the bucket if you wish to. So here in the documentation itself that we were looking at, I just saw look at different commands, and here there is delete buckets as well. Okay, so AWS S3 RB. Okay, and you can see this example as well. AWS S3 RB, and you have to specify the bucket name. And if you come over here, okay, AWS S3 RB. This is our complete bucket name. So I'll just copy this with this S3 tag. Oops. So I'll just say S3 RB. RB stands for remove bucket. And if you run this, it will remove the bucket. You can see over here. Now, if you go over here and if you do a quick check, so where is the refresh button? So you can see over here, you don't have any buckets. So this is indeed working fine. Okay. You can see the power. You can imagine the power of AWS now. Right, there are tons of commands. Okay, if you so not the power of AWS, but the power of CLI is what I meant. Okay, you can imagine the power of CLI. If you want to copy something from your local directory to a bucket, you can do so. You can sync objects over here. Okay, so it synchronizes the content of bucket and the directory. Okay, so this is something, these are frequently used options for commands over here. So this is the entire documentation. You can try out different commands, and these are this is a CLI reference over here for different sort of commands over here. Okay, but this is right now for S3. Okay, you can play around with S3. I'll also show you EC2. So here you can see if you go to EC2, okay, there is a video. And EC2, of course, we know what EC2 is, and it starts with key value pair, or key pairs is what I should say over here. Okay, so to access EC2 instance, you need a key pair. Okay, and you can create the key pair, get it downloaded onto your system and connect it. So this is the same key pair that we have that you can use even for doing SSH, right? So you can create a key pair. You can see over here, this is the command over here. Okay, and output will go over here in this particular file. So what I would do is I would copy this command over here. Okay, this is command with query option for PowerShell. So for PowerShell, this redirects to default UTF-8 encoding. That is what it's saying. Okay, which cannot be used with some SSH client. So you must convert the output to output by pipping it to the out file command. Explicitly set it to ASCII. Okay, so I understood what it's talking about. So here it's saying like this command, if you run on PowerShell, it is going to default to UTF-8 encoding, which cannot be used with some SSH clients. So if you plan to do SSH over here, just make sure it's encoded to ASCII, which we are doing over here. Okay, so anyways, you can pick any of the command. I'm not going to do SSH right now over here, but I'll just paste this over here. You can see my key pair and queries key material. Let us run this and let us see how this works. And if I do ls over here, so you can see this is the key pair that has been created. Okay, so the key pair is created, okay, successfully. Now what I will do is I will run the command basically to create the instances. Okay, so you can see over here, if you're connecting, so this command will be needed if you're running on Mac or Linux. Okay, so after you create the key pair, this command will be needed. Okay, because generally on Mac and Linux, whenever you have any sort of file created, it does not have the right permissions. So the chmod command will give it the right permissions of the private key file, so that only you can read it. Okay, so there's a command for that. So if you're on Mac or Linux, just use this. You can make use of this to display your key pair. I'm not going to display my key pair. Okay, but here we can come to now EC2 instances, and here you will see the command basically to launch and allow us to launch the EC2 instance. So what I'm going to do is I'll copy this command. Okay, copy it, come over here, paste this. Okay, now here you will notice it needs image ID, right? It needs image ID over here. So this image ID you need to get. Okay, now this image ID you need to replace, and mykeypair.pem. So mykeypair.pem is called, that's a file name that we have on a local machine as well. Okay, but we need the Amazon machine image, AMI ID. Now before running this command, I suddenly feel we should have got the AMI ID first, because getting the AMI ID also requires us to basically, you can get it from UI, okay, but I wish to get the AMI ID first. So what I will do is I can open a new tab of PowerShell here itself. So here now to get the command, I have switched to the Google's AI mode, okay, because we need to get the command to get the AMI ID. Okay, so I'll tell Google to, or Google AI Gemini, I'll tell it to give me command to get Amazon owned image IDs, okay, with image names sorted by latest version at top. Okay, and it is giving me this. Okay, so it will give me this command. Okay, it's in multiple lines over here, so I don't want it in multiple lines. Give me in one line. Give me command in one line, something like this. Okay, so you will get the command like this in one line. I hope this is correct. Okay, this output is in text. Okay, so we need the output in table format. So it says output in text. Okay, so what I will do is I'll paste it over here. Instead of output in text, I'll say output in table format, like so. And okay, one problem it did. Owners it has mentioned as self, so we are not getting any output. So I'll have to modify this. Despite telling it that I want Amazon owned image, it added owners as self. So I want Amazon to own this image. This should be Amazon based images, and I should get a list now. So let's wait for a while. Okay, so you get this image. Okay, you can see there are so many images that we have. You can just keep on pressing enter over here. Okay, and you can see the image. Okay, why is this data this way? Okay, so just press enter. Okay, so you can see there are so many images that are coming in. Okay, you can make use of any image. Ubuntu based images are coming as well. You can see deep learning, Ubuntu Pro, any sort of images you can pick. Okay, so you can pick any one. Okay, and you can get the image ID from here. Okay, so I'll pick some this one. Okay, so this is one way of getting the image IDs, or you can even get it from the console. Okay, so let me show you how you can get it from the console. So you can say search for EC2. Okay, and here, so here you can say launch an instance. Okay, and here you can see whichever AMI ID you select. So for example, if I selected Ubuntu, okay, free tier eligible, you can see this AMI ID. Okay, so you can simply copy this based on your requirements, or you can make use of the command like I've shown you. Okay, so we'll switch over to this terminal. Okay, and if I come over here, okay, so here I'll paste the image ID. Okay, key pair name is same. Subnet ID you can mention over here, whichever subnet ID is there. Okay, but I'll just press enter. Probably I'll get an error. Okay, subnet ID does not exist. So maybe let me skip this subnet ID and let me see over here if you see any sort of error. Okay, security group also does not exist. So these all things you can create over here. First, you have to create security groups, subnets, and then you have to mention it over there. Okay, my key pair. So does this key pair exist? It's mykeypair.pem. So I just press tab and got the actual file name. And now I'll press enter. Okay, when calling run instances, the key pair does not exist. Is that so? So let me check it again. Okay, so I realized like .pem should not be there in the key pair name. Okay, it should not be the file name, but it should be the key pair name. And now you can see this kind of an output over here. Okay, so which means that the creation of the instance is done over here. Okay, I'll just press Ctrl C over here. And if you come over here, let me see over here EC2, and let me go to the instances tab. You can see this is the instance that has been created. This is the instance ID. It just got created. And if you come over here, you should see the instance ID. So you can see owner ID and everything over here. Okay, I'm not able to find the instance ID. Maybe because before that only I terminated the command before it printed the instance ID. But here you can see all the details, and this is the exact instance that has been created. Okay, so you can see it's now in the running state. You can see over here, right? It's now in the running state. Now here you can come and you can say AWS describe AWS EC2 describe instances, like so, and it will give you the details of all the instances. You can see it will describe all the instances. Okay, you can stop any instance over here. So if you come over here on the browser, we have this documentation where you can see EC2 instances. Okay, so launch your instance. So you can launch your instance this way. We already saw. Okay, if you scroll down, you can add a block device to your instance. You can list your instances. You can see AWS instances is what we saw. Okay, the following command filters the list to only T2 micro instances and output only the instance ID. Okay, so this is the command which will apply the filter as T2 micro, and it will only give you the instance ID. So I can copy this command and let me run this. Rather than getting this entire JSON, okay, I would rather get the instance ID only. So you can get the instance ID like this. You can see this is the entire query. So AWS EC2 describe instances will give you the entire dump or the entire JSON that describes the instances for all the instances. You can make use of filters, and you can say you can filter the data, and you can only get the instance ID over here. You can see. So you're filtering the data first to micro instances, and then you're making use of this query option over here to just get the instance ID. Okay, so that is what you're doing. And then you can see over here, you can describe any of the instances like this. You can filter things over here. Okay, you can terminate the instances. So I'll copy this command. We can terminate it. So I'll add this over here, and here you can add the instance IDs. So I'll copy this instance ID like so, and you will paste it, and you can say terminate. The moment you say terminate, you can see the previous state, current state is shutting down, the previous state is running, and this is again the entire JSON, okay, which you see. Okay, so it's shutting down now, and you can come over here, and if you do a refresh, it was running early on, now it's shutting down. Okay, so it's basically getting deleted. Okay, you can reboot the instances. There are tons of commands that you will see over here. Okay, change the EC2 instance type with bash scripting. So you can use all of this in bash scripting as well, and you can manage all of this using scripts, right? Same thing you can do for IAM as well. Okay, IAM thing I'm not going to show you because I understand you get a gist now, right? So you can create a group using this. You can mention the group name, right? You can create a user like this. Okay, if you can make use of the create user command, or if you want, I can execute this command. Okay, so if you come over here, just confirm if this is shutting down. Okay, this is shutting down. So maybe I'll come over here. I'll just duplicate this. Okay, I'll have that EC2 tab open. I want to check whether it actually shut, and I'll delete the instance because I don't want to get charged or billed for anything. All right. So just make sure whatever you're creating using command line for learning purpose, you just delete them. Right. So I have these few users over here. All right. And you can see I have user groups over here, image uploaders. What I can do is I'll paste a command over here. Let me paste one command which I copied. I'll create a group called my IAM group. Okay. Let us see if this gets created. You can see this is the data that gets printed along with group ID. If you refresh, you'll see my IAM group over here. Okay. Now, if you come here, you'll also see create user over here. So my user is the user that is created. So you can run this. Okay. You can see if you come here, if you go to users, and if you refresh, you'll see my user being created, right? Isn't this good? And then you can add the user to the group using this command. So you're saying AWS IAM, add user to group, and then you're specifying the username and the group name. So this user will be added to this group. Okay, so you can run this. Okay, and initially it was not added in any sort of group. Okay, because it was just created. But now you can see over here it's 0 group. But if you refresh this, it should come 1 group over here. Okay, if you go over here, okay, you can see it's part of this group now. Right, initially it was not the part of this group, and then you can get the group name, get the group detail, okay, and you can verify whether IAM group contains my user. So you don't need to switch over to console to see if the user has already been added or not. Okay, all the operations that you can do from the console, from the UI, can be done from the console as well. Okay, so you can see over here, you can see users being added, and this is the group details. So this is the one user that has been added. Okay. So that's the thing, and yeah, you can do a lot of other things. You can attach the policy. You can like create a policy like this. You can see you can do a lot of things over here. Is basically what I mean to say. All right, you can also deal with other services on AWS, like you can create VPCs. Okay, you can allocate Elastic IP. You can associate Elastic IP with an instance. You can create a subnet. You can create a new VPC. So AWS networking related concepts, you can do a lot over there. Okay, and somewhere over here, if you let me see if I can get the link to the entire reference guide over here. Okay, so I found the command line reference over here. So if you come to this Amazon CLI page, you can see this command reference. Click on this, and you should be taken to this page where you can reference everything. Okay, so for example, EC2, if you search for EC2, you can see EC2, and all the EC2 related concepts, all the EC2 related commands will be listed over here. You can see all of this, right? Tons of commands. You can click on this. You can learn more about any of the command, the options, what each option means. You can play around, right? So yeah, this is the reference, CLI reference that I would recommend you check out, because there's literally everything that you can do from the UI. You can even do it from the CLI. The CLI is that helpful. Okay, and it's really useful when you're working in an environment where you don't have an interface, like you're working on a Linux machine and you just have access to the terminal. So, you as a developer will be expected to make use of AWS CLI, and it's very common these days to make use of CLI. Okay, I hope you all had fun and you understood everything.